What's up, everybody? It's Quintin from Hunters of Light, and today I know a lot of people who've been looking forward to this chat. A lot of people are quite excited that they're not face to face with these beautiful creatures. But today we've got Desire Pelser, who's going to be talking about a bug's life and that sort of thing. I can't believe that she doesn't do this for a living. Desiree, your images are amazing. I mean, I look at that and I go, yeah, okay, maybe I should give up my day job.
Thank you.
The one thing that I wasn't aware of is that I think Desiree was saying last year at the Durban Roadshow for Canon, you won was it the wildlife category?
Yes.
With one of your macro images. That's outstanding. I think it's like woohoo for the small guys.
It was. It definitely was.
Oh,
and it was shot on a completely entry level equipment as well. Yeah. So,
and I think that's the important thing. You really just don't know what the shots are being taken on, etc. And I think everyone assumes you have to have the top level equipment. It certainly helps, but you don't need to have the best and most modern and etc. It's like, and a lot of times things are based on assumptions, and like my assumption was, well, clearly you do this for a living. You're just Desiree, and that's what you do.
So, exactly.
So you have been doing a little bit of work, etc. During the lockdown. You were saying, I don't know if you want to just give us a bit of info on that, and then we can start.
Okay, sure. Well, I work as a communications consultant and a media designer and publication designer, and my clients are all NGOs. So I work in the environmental sector and the human rights sector. And certainly during lockdown, the work has increased. It hasn't decreased, as you can imagine. So, yeah, I've been really busy during lockdown. So,
well, I suppose you've got something to keep you busy, hey?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's nice to have the photography, as you say, like to kind of go outside into the garden.
Yeah.
So safari on the doorstep.
Yeah. Well, especially for someone who shoots macro of bugs, etc. I mean, in that world, where some of the little spiders and goodies are like on the size of a pinhead kind of thing, or at least a ballpoint pen, traveling from one location to another. In that world seems like hundreds of kilometers, so it's a whole world out there.
It's like a lifetime.
Exactly.
The great adventure from here to here.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm really excited to see the images, and just a reminder for everyone, please ask questions. I'll pass them on to Desiree and get them answered if we can. She also said settings at the end, and there's a bit of humor, a reason for that. So settings at the end. All right, Desiree, cool. It's over to you. You can share your screen.
Thanks. Going to see how this goes. Okay, can you see the screen?
No, not yet. Did you share it down at the bottom? There's the little share screen button.
Let me just get back into Zoom.
There we go.
Okay, so
right, perfect. So
now you should see my screen.
Fantastic.
Okay, great. Okay, so welcome to A Bug's Life. I just want to say, Q, thanks so much for the opportunity, certainly, to kind of present this to the world. Not many people know about macro photography, or people talk about macro photography. Generally, they're talking about product photography. So this is very much about bugs and spiders. Okay, so should we get going? I just want to say up front that all my images are shot handheld and in the field. So I'm not going to be talking about the fancy macro where you start using rails and focus stacking and all of that stuff. This is very much kind of like on the ground with the insects, literally. Let me just see if I can get this to work. Okay, so what All good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of my background to macro photography, and it really has been a journey. And then a bit of discussion about why spiders and insects. Yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot. And then pertaining to the spiders and insects, I really want to talk about ethics. A lot of people kind of like gloss over the ethics issue, especially because they're such small creatures. It's almost like it doesn't matter, but it really does. And then I'll talk a bit about gear, a bit about lighting, and then at the end, yeah, about the settings.
the huge difficult settings.
Yeah, exactly. So people, as you're saying, if people do have questions, if they'll just hold the settings questions until the end, and then I'll kind of deal with all of that at the same time.
Cool. But any other questions that come up, feel free, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Kian. Okay, let's get going. So just over 2 years ago, I discovered macro photography, and I did a little bit of photography before that. Kind of, I bought my first DSLR, and I was kind of experimenting with portraits and that kind of thing. But I was really yearning for the bush. I had this deep love of nature and wildlife, and I just couldn't get into the bush. And it kind of dawned on me that there is a safari, and it's right on my doorstep. I mean, it's under my feet. I kind of realized there was a macro safari on my doorstep, and it was my garden. So I invested in a really expensive second-hand 60mm macro lens. Wow. And off I went.
Second-hand.
So it was, exactly. I think it cost me like $2,500 or something. I mean, it was ridiculous. So it's an EFS lens. I mean, it really is entry level. And then I set about kind of exploring. And then I met and I fell in love with the rain spider. So these are images of that rain spider, and these were my very first macro images. So the light's wrong. I didn't know how to focus. I mean, they're harsh, they're awful images from a macro perspective, but they're very, very special to me because it kind of was this love affair I was having with the spider. I kind of like discovered her in the garden, and then I would go down and watch her like every day she went about her life. And something happened, and I know that this sounds like awfully woohoo and all of that, but I really had a connection with this creature. So it was like we connected on some kind of level, that we connected as individuals. And we were like, I was so in awe and inspired by her as an individual creature. Now, normally we look around and we see spiders and insects, and they are just spiders and insects, but to realize that they are individuals and they each have a purpose and a plan, and they get on with their lives was such an awakening for me. So incidentally, I watched the spider for about 2 months, and I watched as she kind of built her nest, and her eggs and her spiderlings hatched. And then about a week after her spiderlings hatched, she died. And it is the behavior with rain spiders that they'll keep themselves alive to protect the spiderlings, but as soon as they're ready to leave the nest, they'll die. So they generally won't eat or drink. So it's complete devotion.
Sure, that's
I was in awe of, yeah. So to say I was in awe of this, yeah, was an understatement. Okay, and then kind of with that, I kind of thought, oh, well, look at the spiders. And I started looking around me. And then I started finding spiders that were really there all the time. I just had never seen them. So this is a crab spider. We joke and we call it the crap spider, simply because its behavior is to mimic bird poo. So you kind of see it on the leaf and you think, oh, there's another bird poo. And then when you look at it closer, it's a creature and it's alive. So I think there are something like 43,000 species of spider in the world, which is just like, it's amazing.
Sure.
Yeah, stunning. Hey.
What is your, I mean, do you have a background in insects? You know, I don't know what you'd call it. Is it just learned over time?
Yeah, I think, with the love comes like the genuine kind of like wanting to explore and find out more. And I don't know, I think I can relate it kind of to being, because I used to do birding as well. So, you know, when you first discover birds and then you want to go out and find out more and tick them off the list and, you know, learn to ID them. It was very much that with insects for me. And then just like basic things, you know, like I talk about insects and spiders and people go, but aren't spiders insects? And no, they're not, they're arachnids. So the difference between spiders and insects are the spiders have got 8 legs, insects have got 6 legs. Spiders will have 2 body parts. They've got a head area and an abdomen, and the insects have got 3 body parts. So it was just like discovering all that, like really interesting stuff about these creatures. And then I started really finding like these tiny little jumping spiders. They come in all shapes and sizes.
These ones fascinate me. I don't know what it is about them. It's just like the build and the eyes and I don't know what it is, but they're just fascinating.
Yeah, they're kind of considered the gateway spider. You know, like if you're going to start loving spiders, you're going to start loving the salty bird.
Right,
it's so true, you know. So it's in the family Salticidae, which is the jumping spider. So they're affectionately called salties. So you kind of hear people talking about they found a salty. What they're talking about is they found a jumping spider.
Ah, okay. A whole underground lingo, hey?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they really are amazing creatures, these. So kind of just generally talking about spiders, like spiders have got 8 eyes. And then the arrangement of the eyes is you use that to ID the family. So each family will have a different eye arrangement. So with the salties, they've got those 2 really big eyes in the front and then 3 eyes running around. And it's interesting that spiders don't really see very well. So the eyes in the front are actually not used very well for seeing. They're used to detect light. And you'll see that they've got lots of hairs. The hairs is more like the sensory organ. So they'll detect vibration through their hairs. So just little things, you know, it's like they really were amazing creatures. And the fact that I could photograph them, like this spider is probably about, I don't know, smaller than 0.5 centimeter across. But then when you photograph it, you can see the absolute detail, like the attention to detail. You know, I just like marveled at evolution.
Well, that's one of the things that blew me away with you know, the image that's part of your promo stuff. I mean, the detail in the eyes. I just looked at that and I thought that's unbelievable. I mean, was that shot with like a telescope or something like it? It's, you know, it's amazing that, you know, the creatures that are this small are so perfectly formed. You know, you don't think about it like that. It's a bug. And you know, if you don't like that bug, you squash it. Which is, you know, I mean, some people.
Well,
that's
maybe
not everyone.
Not up to this, but yeah.
Well,
no, exactly.
Absolutely. And you know, it's just that there's when you have photographs that are taken this sort of beautifully and have so much detail. It just man, it blows me away. It's absolutely amazing how much detail there is there.
Thank you. Okay, so then here's this kind of thing. Like, imagine just discovering this in the garden and you think that's a creature. You know, it's not someone who's imagined something for some movie prop or set. It's a live creature and it's developed this way through evolution. And I look at this and I just can think, imagine if that was like a human, what the personality would be like. Completely flamboyant and over the top and completely comfortable, you know?
Yeah.
And then just talking about that. Sorry.
No, carry on.
Just talking about the eyes. So you can see in this spider as well, it also has 8 eyes, but the eye arrangement is completely different. So that's eye arrangement is how you use for ID. But beautiful, eh? And I mean, the colors are just like amazing.
That one is a heavy metal. If it was a human, would be a heavy metal.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Follower.
Yeah. Or like imagine
or drummer.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I mean, on my journey was like just discovering all these different spiders, you know, and then they're not the easiest things to see. So these are bark spiders, and I mean, the camouflage is just amazing. So this bark spider is probably about 5 millimeters across. So if you're walking through like the bush and past the trees, you really don't see it. So that's the magic of macro photography. You can actually take a photograph and then come back and examine it. So with these creatures, if you kind of take 2 steps back, you're not going to see it. They really disappear. So this is another bark spider. And I mean, you can imagine if you're standing further away, there's no way you're going to see this creature.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you're looking closely, you're probably not going to see it. Some proper lighting and a lens to get closer.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah. The thing with these creatures is that they'll build like quite a big web at night, and then in the morning they'll gather the web and they actually eat it. And then sometimes when you find them, you come across the anchor line. So if you see in this image at the top, going out the 2 anchor lines from the web. So then as the dusk starts settling, it'll start like building its web again in the same place. So they are territorial and they have hunting spots. Okay, so talking about camouflage, and then look at this. So this is also a crab spider. It's a nocturnal spider. But I mean, if you just kind of turn the leaf around, you wouldn't see this.
Yeah, but when you take a bit of a look, you see the eyes and some of the hairs on the legs.
Yes, amazing. And I mean, just look how perfectly camouflaged it is. And then that spider's like going about its life. It's hunting, it's mating, it's like, it's a marvel to me. And then also, as I was saying to you earlier, something about these creatures that we often forget when we see the photographs is just how tiny they are. So this is, again, a crab spider, but this spider is the size of a grass seed. So she's probably about 2 millimeters across. It's almost impossible to kind of explain what that looks like. You think 2 millimeters, that's 2 millimeters. But in terms of like a match head, she's half the size of a match head. And she's a creature and she's alive and she has a purpose and she has a function. And she's beautiful. So then I was very enamored with spiders, but then also I started noticing insects. And you kind of think insects are these like beetles that roam around and they're brown. Well, they're not. I mean, just look at this. And this creature is called, its common name is a jewel bug, and you can just understand why. I mean, can you just imagine? And that's all natural. I mean, obviously the light is pulling the detail out and the color out, which is the reason why in macro photography, the most important thing is light. It's not the gear. And I'll get into that discussion in a second.
Absolutely, but it's the same with the sacred ibis. Is it the sacred ibis, the glossy ibis? Where you've got the iridescence in the feathers and different light. It's a different color. It's amazing. It's not just a feather. It's
exactly.
It's almost as though when they were made, someone thought out and said, "Well, wouldn't it be amazing if someone was looking at it, but looking at it carefully?" They saw these other colors, just as that'd be funny,
It would be funny. But also an interesting thing is that none of that color is pigment, which people don't understand. It's light.
Yeah.
Say for birds, for example, the only pigment is in the turacos, which is the Livingston and the Neisner and the purple crested. That is the only pigment. The green, I think, and the red. Yeah. But in other birds, the color is light. It's not pigment.
It's absolutely amazing. So Jose wants to know, are any of these spiders poisonous?
Okay, so so there's some spiders are poisonous, but I think what he's meaning is venomous.
Okay.
So something is venomous if it bites you. That's venom. If you eat it and it's a problem, that's poisonous.
Right.
So yes, practically all spiders are venomous, but there are probably only 2 or 3 that they kind of term them as medically significant. In other words, if you get bitten, go to the doctor and find a pharmacy. But a lot of the times the bite, it's my experience and also just reading up a lot is people tend to blame spiders quite easily for bites. Mm-hmm. Yes, they do bite, but not every bite is a spider bite.
Right.
yeah, they are something to kind of respect. But certainly as other creatures, they're not just going to charge across the floor and come and bite you, you know. I mean, they will protect themselves. And bearing in mind, they're tiny. So like if you're thinking a 2 millimeter across spider,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's not going to
really
charge very
struggle
fast.
to bite you.
You know?
Yeah. But certainly there are spiders that are medically significant. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so bugs. And then these are bagworms. I mean, these are little worms. I mean, and they build their shelters. Like, how can a worm build a shelter like this? To me, I just find this so fascinating. And every species of bagworm builds its own kind of structure. So that design is in its DNA. I mean, that's just amazing.
That's incredible. That's so beautiful.
I mean, how does a worm do that? Like, I could just sit and watch this for ages. I've never seen one actually doing the building, which I'd love to do. Can you just imagine? And it's on instinct, you know. So that beauty and that design is instinct. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I think, I could go live in one of those. There are even some that build, I don't know if anyone's seen them in the garden, almost like a wigwam.
No.
And like a log cabin. It's just like amazing. Okay, so obviously this is a caterpillar. So just kind of talk about why insects and spiders. I mean, I've spoken before about, I just find them absolutely amazing creatures, and from a visual perspective, truly beautiful. But around about the same time that I started kind of being interested in macro photography of insects specifically, the world started waking up to what's being called the insect apocalypse. So a lot of articles and things started coming through about science that had been done, that there just were no insects around. I mean, the populations were completely decimated in some areas. And people use a simple example about, like, when you were a kid and you were driving in your mom's car, you'd have to get out and clean the windshield because there'd be like so many insects. I mean, how many times do you see that now? You can drive from here to Joburg and not hit one insect.
Well, except if you're driving in my old Land Rover, then it's like a flat end of a box, and yeah, you hit everything, and you know.
Yeah, no, sure. But I mean, this kind of insect apocalypse is a real issue worldwide, simply because of the vital role they play in the ecosystem. I mean, if the insects disappear, the ecosystem crumbles and everything dies. So my interest in the insects is from an art perspective, certainly, but also from a biological citizen science perspective. So even the National Geographic, you see this, I think it's this month's issue. They've done a whole kind of research on the insects. The world is really waking up to the fact that they're disappearing and what will happen to us when they go. So this is different issues from across the world. So it is like an international issue with the National Geographic this month.
Because I know there's obviously been a lot of discussion about bees and the problems that would cause. But I suppose people haven't thought further than that.
No. No. And also I think a lot of the time when people talk about bees, they're talking about honeybees. And if you think about it, a honeybee is actually a domesticated insect. And it's one species of bee. There are hundreds of species of bees, and they range from like tiny, tiny, tiny little insects, and I'll show you some now. And they're major pollinators. But then flies, people have such a problem with flies, and most flies are pollinators. So once the pollinators are gone, we really will be in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's the same sort of cutesy thing, bees, honeybees are cute and they pollinate and they are amazing. Flies, no, kill it.
They're lovely, Squash this bee, but let's build a beehive, yeah. Yeah, no, sure. So yeah, there are lots of figures around this, and it really is a troubling issue. So if anyone's interested, I can send some links, but there's lots online about this issue. But I realize that this is a photography talk and not a biology talk, so
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Okay. So just to say that I've always been like really fascinated by kind of the explorers and the citizen scientists of old. I can just imagine like Charles Darwin in this case, but can you imagine the diversity from like 100 years ago? Like walking in a forest and what was around, the creatures and the fauna and flora must have just been amazing. So I think that I see my world from a citizen science perspective a lot of the time. And I think that I use my camera as a journal. Like I kind of say it is my nature journal. It is how I'm documenting my environment. And just as an aside, the photo behind is literally my back garden. So I live on the edge of the Kranskloof Nature Reserve in Kloof.
Sure.
So I do have the advantage of having quite a lot of diversity around me.
Absolutely. I think one of the problems, certainly in our area, but I don't think it's restricted to ours, is we had I wouldn't say it was a wetland, but there was a river that ran through the area. And once they started developing that with an estate, we started getting creatures in our garden that we'd never seen before. I think we had 2 hedgehogs, which for them to have gotten to where we are would have gone through a couple of properties across a major road. And and development happens, but I suppose that's the thing you don't think about is all the little creature habitats that get destroyed.
Exactly. Kind of the right to life. Things do have a right to life. And people will often say, yes, but they're in my space. Well, actually, no, you're in their space. So it's kind of just a mutual respect, I think, developing that respect, that life deserves respect. So the natural scientist approach is a lot of the photographs that I take. So like this, for example, this is a sequence of a hoverfly emerging. And just watching how it emerges and then being able to kind of capture that. So you'll see it's like slowly getting out of its shell. And then the bottom, look at the center bottom picture. Look, those are wings. And just from an artistic perspective, how absolutely beautiful are those wings? So this sequence probably took about, 10 to 15 minutes. And then it flew off so quickly, I didn't get a photo of the last one, which is like a fundamental error from a citizen scientist perspective. But this is the photograph of a hoverfly. So this is the same species. So, just look at this creature. It's just so amazing. It's the gold on its back. But that gold you will only pick up with light.
Yes, absolutely.
But generally, yeah. But, look at its profile. Isn't that like awesome?
I just love those eyes, made up of these millions of bits of it's just beautiful.
Amazing. Amazing.
You have a different perspective for these creatures when you see them at this size. Then it's and I think it's probably quite important that more people see them like this, because that may influence the way that they look at it. And I suppose a question related to that is how we were kind of talking a little bit in this sort of direction early on, but do people buy prints from you? Would you do exhibitions and get the work out that way?
Kind of like trying to make a living in the macro photography or the insect macro photography is just, it's not viable. No one wants to buy in my experience, no one wants to buy images like this, because there's a fine line, I think, when people look at images like this from a science perspective or from an art perspective. And when you're taking in photographs of insects, it's very kind of hard to find that place where an ID photograph or here's a photograph of a hoverfly actually translate into a photograph that's pleasing to hang on your wall. It's very hard to do that. I think in some of my images, I'm starting to get there, and it is a place I'm exploring. But as I was saying to you before, I'm planning this exhibition, but I'll see how it unfolds. To have like huge prints of these creatures, like massive prints, so you can really see the detail. But then somewhere also to have a hand drawing of what it actually looks like, its actual size. And I think people will be blown away.
Well, first they'd need to lift up the magnifying glass that's hanging next to it to be able to see it.
No, but interactive, imagine. So you can come in, here's your magnifying glass, and there you go.
Love it.
Great. Okay. And this kind of thing that you discover, they're not beautiful photographs from a photographic perspective, but just really interesting. So this is a wasp nest, and you can see the development of the pupa. Which if you walk past a wasp nest, it's like, oh, you know, there's another wasp, let's go crush the nest. But there's a whole kind of like ecosystem and family that's happening there. Okay, so this is one of my favorite images. I took this image in 2018, and it kind of like marked my development as a macro photographer. I mean, the difference between this image and the very first rain spider images I showed you was like, it was a journey. So this kind of like, I'm no longer just a snap happy person who likes bugs and takes photographs. I'm almost like becoming a macro photographer now. So yeah, this image is very special to me.
I think one of the things that I was going to say, sorry to interrupt there, one of the things I was going to say, the difference where it changes from an ID shot or a record shot to an art image is depth of field in my, you know.
Yes, in a lot of cases. Yes.
You know, you a nice clean background and depth of field where you focus on one thing and the rest just becomes this beautiful smush in the background. That for me would be, you know, the difference.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is I want to talk a little bit about ethics, as I was saying before. A lot of insects are very hard to photograph. I mean, they're skittish, certainly. You have to approach them very carefully, which kind of makes people want to do things like freeze them or, so that they can take pictures. And some of the stuff is just so unethical. And if you kind of translate it to, you wouldn't do that, you know, if you, to an animal, you wouldn't kind of like freeze it or kill it just so that you kill it and mount it so that you can take a photograph of it. But a lot of that is unfortunately happening in this genre of photography. You kind of like find pictures are posted online and everyone goes, oh, look at this picture, it's so amazing, there's a frog with a snail on its head. You know, when you look at it, it's completely unnatural behavior. Like there's no way that happened naturally. So how did the photographer get that to happen? And you don't want to think about what was actually done to those creatures, you know. What a lot of people do, or macro photographers, you know, sometimes you'll see those photographs and they like have got dragonflies and they've got these amazing, like, you think they're water droplets, but these huge bubbles and it's shiny and everyone goes, oh, look at these jewels. There was a photographer that actually won an international competition with one of those photographs. Then it was revealed that he'd actually sprayed them with liquid nitrogen to kind of like to kill them off so that he could take the pictures. I mean, obviously the prize was rescinded, but a lot of that does happen. So
yeah, it's a huge pity, and again, I think it's that whole sort of feeling of the, you know, they're bugs, and for the majority of people, you know, just grab a can of doom and go for it. But I really think that by having images that are like this one that you've got on the screen now, it gives them like personality and character, and you know, that would certainly go a long way to changing people's opinions.
And that's what I'm hoping. You know, that's really one of the fundamental reasons I do this. Okay, so generally I don't interfere in my environment. If I'm taking a photograph of the insect, I don't disturb it as much as possible. Because of the proximity, though, sometimes that it happens, it's out of your control. So I don't pick up the insects, I don't move them, you know, I try and get them in as natural as environment as possible. But sometimes they are as interested in you as you are in them. So the reason I've included this photograph really is just to explain that when you see photographs of insects on people's hands, it's not really a good thing, it's not really okay. But also just to kind of indicate size. I mean, the frog at the top right, that's the end of my thumb. I mean, that's how tiny that is, you know. And you can see from the top left-hand side, I mean, that's almost like unimaginably tiny. I mean, this little salty, it's like, yeah. Okay, so this is a spider with her offspring. I mean, I look at this photograph now and I think, sure, imagine being this parent during lockdown. But the reason I've included this in kind of like the ethics is that these creatures are very very maternal. I mean, she will protect her young. So it's almost like some signal gets given and those spiderlings will scatter. So you come close to them and they bungee jump. So they kind of will bungee jump all over the place. And then she kind of gives a signal, and I don't know how it happens, but all of a sudden they'll start coming back together again. Unfortunately, some of them are bungeed too far, or their bungee cords will get caught on something and they'll get lost and they won't make it back. And you think, just because I want to photograph, I've kind of endangered all of these lives. It wasn't just that spiderling, it was all the effort and energy that went into this, her like laying the eggs and raising the kids. But they are beautiful, even that tiny. Even that tiny. And then something, this again isn't a photograph for a photograph's sake, but just something interesting that what macro photography can reveal. So this is a potter wasp's nest. You often see them like underneath leaves. And they're tiny, it's probably about the size of a marble. So the image on the right is a crop from the image at the top. So it's just amazing to see that insect, she spent ages collecting bits of mud in her mandible. She's a tiny wasp, collecting mud, bringing them, building this the nest. Then she'll go and find caterpillars. She stings them and paralyzes them, and then she stocks her larder, and then she lays an egg. So on the image on the right, I don't know if you can see, I don't know, here. Can you see my mouse? Can you see there's a black line here?
Yeah.
You see at the end of that black line, there's a little white dot. That white dot is an egg. So she's laid the egg and it's on a string. She'll seal the string to the entrance and then close the nest, which is this one here. When that egg hatches, the larva falls down into the caterpillars, and then it's got food for like a larder, fresh food. It's just awesome.
Wow, that's incredible. Anton van Niekerk is saying, thanks for bringing the ethics with insects and the micro world. It's very important. For those who don't know, Desiré has been at the forefront of true conservation and animal welfare for decades and decades. I don't think that's an indication of age. It's just for a long time.
Thank you.
Also part of organizations that have shaped our approach to animal welfare and ethics treatments of animals for the macro to the micro. Thanks Anton, for that.
Thanks, Anton. Okay, so thank you. This image is the image that won the Canon wildlife competition. When I look at it now as a macro image, there's much wrong with it. From a technical perspective, it isn't a strong image, but I think the awe of the creature just kind of like comes through. So it's kind of my entry into a discussion about gear, that this image was actually shot on an entry-level 550D with an EFS 60mm lens. And it won a competition ahead of like wildlife, photographers. So it's not all about the gear. There's something else that happens. And I think it also comes to you because you love the creatures, you're able to kind of show them in a different way, not just a technical way.
It's quite an interesting point that I think, what it almost says is that if you love what you do with like an almost fanatical passion,
yes.
It will show in the work.
Yes.
So you can do that with portraits, with weddings, etc. And I think that everyone who who's really sort of standing out in their genre, it's because they have an intense passion for what they do. So it's actually a very interesting point that you raised there.
Thank you. Okay, and then the thing is, like, I think all photographers get is like people will see this image and then they'll say to me like, wow, like what camera do you use? It's anyway, it's a very interesting question, but I do use it as an opening to discuss other things, so I welcome the question. But seriously, as I'm saying, gear is not the most important thing in macro photography, and certainly the camera isn't the most important thing. So in macro photography, we use manual focus. So having a camera with the latest and greatest auto-focusing system is certainly not necessary. And we use I use diffused flashlight. So having really great dynamic range is wonderful, but you don't have to have it. So that stuff's all nice to have, but certainly it's not necessary. And I'll get to the settings just now, but generally my settings remain constant. I kind of go up and down with a few f-stops, or I change the power of the flash. But you know, you don't have to have a camera that you can get to the settings quickly, or it's just not necessary in this genre.
I think you probably also find that, and I'm just assuming here that because it's predominantly using artificial light, you know, you don't really have to react to the conditions, because you are almost creating the conditions that will create that image.
Yes, exactly. And that's again the light. So if you can control the light, you're at a great advantage. And there, I'll get to it later, but I think it was last Tuesday, the person with the birds on the veranda, the sunbirds on the veranda.
Yes.
I mean, it was
Steve Benjamin.
Wow.
Steve Benjamin.
Sure. So hats off to him, Stephen. Your work is amazing. But it really kind of brought home how important light is. I mean, he'd rigged up his underwater lighting setup and he'd shot the birds, and it was like outstanding. But for me, it was the light. It was the light that brought out obviously his skill, but the light really played a huge thing in bringing out the details. And I think that's a lot with macro photography as well, because I think when people start with macro photography, they've got a camera and they've got a macro lens, and then they go out and take photographs of flies, and not really. Then they wonder why it doesn't look like this. And it's the light, essentially the light. Okay, so these are twig whittler eggs. I mean, that egg is probably about 3 millimeters across. So if you think on a macro lens is generally a 1:1, which means that the actual size of the creature is, I don't know if you can explain this properly, but it reproduces the actual size of the creature. That's how it works. The life size on the sensor.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. So it's life size. It's 1:1 on the sensor. Yes.
Yeah, I get mixed up in the maths. But can you imagine? So you've got a full frame sensor, for example, and I think that's probably like, okay. So for example, that's how big it is. Now you've got a grain of rice. The biggest you can produce is 1:1. It's not nearly big enough. You know, you're never going to get this detail. So there are more things you need besides a 1:1 macro lens. I'm going to start going through this a bit quickly now. Okay, so in order to shoot that image, I had to use a 60mm, that's my trusty 60mm lens. I had to use 36 mils worth of extension tubes, and I had both of those. So sometimes I can use the 12 or the 24, put them both together in 36. And then the marvel of macro photography is this thing on the right-hand side, and it's called a Raynox. So it is they call it a lens, but it's like a magnifying filter. It's an ingenious piece of kit. So it plays magic with the light, and it actually enhances detail. You don't lose detail with it. The problem is, though, that an already kind of razor thin depth of field gets what's thinner than razor thin. I don't know, but whatever that is, that's what this gives you. So it takes a lot to learn how to work with this, but it certainly is. You're able to bring things closer. So with the extension tubes, it reduces your minimum focusing distance, and then the Raynox magnifies.
So you were saying that that you shoot handheld. How when the sort of the razor's edge, which then becomes the eyelash of the arachnid's depth of field, how do you then make sure that it stays in focus?
Yeah, okay, lots of practice, lots and lots of practice. So also, like, it's manual focusing. So generally the technique, and I'll talk about that later as well, is like you kind of like move very slightly in and out to get the focus. And it's understanding where to focus. So with depth of field, you know, like the 1/3 in is, in landscape photography, you taught that the 1/3 in, if you shoot 1/3 in, then 1/3 in front will be in focus, and it doesn't work like that with macro. Well, it maybe does, but all that means is that 1/3 of the hair is in focus and 2/3 of the hair is, you know what I mean? It doesn't really count. So it's a challenge, and it's certainly practice. Yeah, practice. and core muscles, because you kind of have to. And also, like, I also shoot with one hand. So a lot of
have you got the flash in your other hand?
No. Okay, so my rig is in one hand, so my camera, my lens, my flash, and my diffuser in one hand. And my right arm muscle is more developed than my left one, just consequently. And I shoot like this. So the reason then my left hand is free, so I can like slightly move a bush away, or I can steady myself on something. So it's almost like if the body has a third point of anchor, a third anchor, your balance kicks in. So you kind of like can touch the tree with a finger and suddenly your body just balances differently.
I would love to see the behind the scenes shot of
yeah, it is funny, I can assure you. Or you get to know your focusing distance. So my focusing distance, I know, is generally that far. So I know that when I've got my hand out and my camera down, I almost like immediately come into focus, and then you play. But it's technique. And obviously a tripod is never going to work in the field. I mean, we work, we're crawling around, crawling under bushes, and I need to be flexible because, insects move and they move quickly.
Well, especially if you come within 5 centimeters of them with a lens.
Exactly. And that's a technique. You see, that's practice too. You have to move like really carefully. And so so essentially that's entry-level equipment. This is kind of like the next step. So you get the Canon MPE, which is an amazing piece of kit. This is it goes to a 5:1, I think, which means you can get 5 times real life or actual life size on the sensor, which is amazing. But it is expensive, and I believe it's very heavy, which for me doesn't really work. And then the new kids on the block are the Laowa. These are getting a lot of attention in the macro realm. They're a company that is investing in macro photographers, which no one else is doing. I mean, I know in South Africa, the macro kind of photographers, there aren't that many around. I mean, obviously not nearly as many as the portrait or wildlife photographers. But internationally, it's quite a big movement. So what's interesting about these lenses is that they're 2:1. And they announced, I think, last week that this divine 100mm is now available with an RF lens, RF mount. So they're even adapting the lenses now for macro photographers who have mirrorless cameras. And mirrorless cameras for macro photography is not always the first choice. There are quite a few challenges involved, and it's got to do with the EVF and things. But I can't get into that now. But what's the bottom right-hand side now, that's a close-up filter by Nisi, and I think those are available in the country, I think from Landscaper Gear. It is competition to the Raynox that I use. I haven't used it. I don't know anyone who does use it, but the reviews are very promising. And I think that's probably about 2,000 Rand or so. So you can see, if you can kind of like build up your gear as you go. You don't have to like go out and like buy the latest and greatest, and okay, so let's talk about light. So as I was saying before, light in macro photography it's not everything, but it's almost everything. Because you're trying to get as much detail in the detail as possible, and because you're so close to the subject. The bane in macro photographer's life is hotspots. So I don't know if you can see on the left-hand image here, there's a hotspot here, and hotspots all the way along here. If you can see where I'm pointing. Oops. That is because the angle of the light wasn't right. So the settings in both of these images are exactly the same. The only difference is the angle. And I probably moved down by maybe, I don't know, ever so from here to here. And that's the difference in those two images. So you kind of like learn that how to work with light. It's not just about how much light there is, but also the direction of the light. So lighting in macro photography is like a huge topic. So
I also really like the angle of the one on the right. I think it
looks like jewelry.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like earrings, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It does.
Have you got arachnid earrings?
No, can't make them. So, yeah, I put an order in. If anyone knows anyone who makes any, let me know. Okay, so flashes. The vast majority of insect macro photographers use a single flash. I know that there's kind of a belief out there that a ring flash is the best thing for macro. It's not for insect, simply because the light is quite harsh, it's quite close to the end of the lens, and you can't diffuse it. And the reflections that you get on the insects are just it looks like it's shot in a studio. So it really just doesn't work. People do use a twin flash, and they are amazing. But come on, Canon, I think Canon wants like 20 grand for a twin flash. It's just, yeah, it's not viable at all. But obviously there are other options.
I'd like that 1 second from the left where you can obviously, position the light. So I suppose from a point of view of a studio photographer that uses lights to position, that works for me.
It does. Those are like quite big arms.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks great and everything, but if you're trying to get into places, you need to get close. So yeah, you can bend the arms back, but then you get caught on bushes and
that's true. I didn't think about that.
yeah. So I use a single flash. I started off with the little Canon flash, the second one on the right hand side, but now I use like a really cheap, I think it's a Tripio, the third one in from the left hand side. But a single flash is a lot of what people are using. So the flash itself is very important, but what's even more important is how you diffuse the flash. So kind of like with insect macro photographers, this is like the thing people talk about. So there are massive groups that are set up just to talk about how you make your DIY diffusers. And it's fun. And you've got like kind of a joke that once you become an insect macro photographer, you cannot walk past a stationery shop or a hardware store or the plastic recycling without kind of like looking for material. And then trying to find something that the best diffusing material is, it's a huge journey. So yeah, just to say that I started with the little kind of the entry level one here on the left hand side, right? Left hand side, you're at the bottom. And that's great in the beginning, but yeah, you kind of like move on. So there is a group called Handmade Macro Flash Diffusers on Facebook. And all the big names in macro, insect photography, kind of all gather in this site. And they've got amazing ideas and they share their patterns and, like I've made one and I've added 2 centimeters here and here's my new pattern. And so if you're interested in light, it certainly is a place to kind of play around in, but just know it is kind of addictive and you kind of just go down a rabbit hole there.
I've put the link to that group on
the
chat. Yeah.
So I just want to point out the person on the bottom right hand side, that's Thomas Shahan. Now you can see it's like a small flash and he's got, I think it was packing foam between 2 pieces of plastic. And he is kind of like, he's the hero in insect macro photography. His stuff is absolutely amazing. So kind of where he goes, people follow. And I think just talking about Lawa, I think it was, they're having webinars as well, and he's going to be on one of them. So I personally certainly going to look out for that. But just to say that simple is, sometimes is better. It just depends. And then also like not every kind of like setup will work with every diffuser. So you can have like on the left-hand side here, that's Andrea Sander, who mentors me in the beginning with the macro photography. So we've kind of like grown together and we go out together and shoot and learn together. And it's fantastic to have someone that you can kind of talk insect macro photography from. So I really do want to give a shout out to her. And if anyone understands kind of like light and macro, it's her. So she will go and like explore the recycling and come back with like a plastic tube from a yogurt cup. And it's like, whoa, look what we've just found. And then, there is a caution though with this whole thing, is that you kind of like tend to become quite fixated on the technical aspect of light. And I mean, I can speak from experience here that this is what happened to me, is that I was so focused on getting perfect light that the quality of my image actually like plummeted. So just like light is important, yes, but not to get fixated on it. And just like it's the joy of being out there and discovering, and you know, kind of the artistic part of it is just as important in getting it right. So yeah, so this is the image you were talking about earlier, Key. I mean, this is just to say when the light is right, when the angle of the light is right, when you've learned how to focus, you know, you can produce images like this. And just to say that this image was shot on an EOS R, but it was shot with an EFS 60mm lens, which means that the R was on a, you know, when it crops the sensor. And with an extension tube and a Raynox. So at the end of the day, I was getting maybe half the quality I could have got out of the R. So the potential is just enormous. But again, it's how, you know, it's the importance of light, learning technique, learning how to focus. And I mean, essentially that's a recent image of mine, and that's kind of like, so you can go from the rain spiders right at the beginning to this image, but it really is 2 years of like, yeah, deep focus and attention and practice. And that's something that's important, is practice, you know. Focusing is a practice. Like if I don't go out and shoot for 2 days, it'll take me a whole morning to get my eye back in. You don't just go out and you're starting to get images that don't focus again. You do lose that. So it is important to practice. And then finally, the settings. Woo, second to last slide. But just to say, settings aren't important, you know. Yeah, they're important, but they're constant. So I generally shoot between f8 and f10. Yeah, it gives me the most depth of field I can get without diffraction. And that's where it stays. So I might go from f8 to f10 or f10 to 11, depending on the light and how much light I need. I'll shoot on 100 ISO if I can. On the ESR, I'm pushing that up to 400 ISO, which I'm finding is actually a very comfortable place to be on the mirrorless, because it means that I don't have to use as much light. So to keep your light soft and even and diffused, you have to kind of reduce the power of the flash. So, and then something odd about the settings is the white balance. White balance in macro photography is really important, just because color is important. And somehow, and I don't understand the technicalities of it, but if your color is off, your detail is also off. Now, I'm not sure how that works, but white balance is crucial. And then you can imagine that if you're making a homemade diffuser and you're playing with all different diffusing materials, the light that's coming through that diffusing material is changing all the time. So yeah, it pretty much is like play and find something that you like. And I can promise you, you'll like it this week, and you'll go out on Monday and you don't like it anymore. And then you can't remember, you go look at your images and you go, oh, look at those I took like 2 months ago. And then you can't remember like what was the setup, because I've changed diffusers 3 times. So yeah, it's pretty much a game.
Absolutely. And I mean, the interesting thing is that what I've certainly found, and again, I'll take it back to the studio environment. You know, I use Elinchrom lights. They're expensive, but you know, they've lasted many years, and the color accuracy each time the fire flashes is, you know, is consistent. I at one stage had some cheaper lights, and I found that the color was slightly different on each shot, but there was definitely a sort of a color cast that came from them. And it's so true what you say. You know, you can set the white balance, but if the flash has got a slightly warmer or slightly cooler or slightly pinker, you know, that's going to start upsetting the overall image.
Yeah. Then people say, yeah, well, just shoot in RAW and fix it in post. Well, it's not that easy. As I was saying, because it affects more than the color if the white balance is off.
Absolutely. It affects your exposure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just like to go back to my setup. So yes, I'm using the R now, but I don't really have a macro lens that I would like to get a different macro lens. It'll take full advantage of the R. So I'm still shooting with the 60 on the R. And I've got an 80D, which a lot of the photographs in this presentation were either shot with the 80D or with the 550D. So certainly like entry-level stuff, nothing fancy. I think that
just let me know again. What was the lens that you're using at the moment? You said the
60 mil. Yeah,
okay.
That's what I'm using at the moment.
I'm asking because Roger's on this chat, or he was a couple of minutes ago. I'm just asking him what he would recommend for the
Roger. You know what? A lot of macro photographers are switching to Olympus. Because the focus stacking in Olympus is just it's amazing. So I want to know from Canon, like, there is no focus stacking on the R, but there is focus stacking on the RP. And I don't understand that. So that's my question to Roger today. Like, please bring focus stacking into the R, because you can imagine, like, the insect is moving, you this close, you're trying to, and now you must do a handheld stack. Look, some people do it and they do it really well. I can't. So I'm really chuffed with myself if I can get a 2-image stack or a 3-image stack. It's like, yeah. But yeah.
Well, if he's on here, he would have heard that. If he isn't,
cool.
I'll tackle him afterwards.
Cool. And then I want to know also, like, what Canon are doing, like, considering what Laowa are doing with the macro lenses they're bringing out, and they're bringing them out quickly, and they like under 10 grand, and from everything I've heard the build is excellent, and it's a 2-to-1. So interesting to see what Canon do with the RP mount on the macro lens.
Absolutely. I know there's a lot of development that's gone into the RF lenses, and I'm pretty sure there's a fairly decent set of macro lenses coming up. But again, Roger will be able to give you that info.
Yeah, fantastic.
Part of it anyway.
It'd be great. Okay, where are we? 2 minutes. Okay, so I've spoken a bit about techniques. I mean, I hold my camera in one hand. I have said to say about that kind of, I use one hand. So technique is pretty much kind of like learning how to move like slowly and quietly and not interfering in the environment, because any kind of movement will alert the creature or the insect. Like if you just touch the leaf accidentally, it'll move. And I don't have any photos in here, but weevils, I mean, you get beautiful weevils, but they can be up here and you just move closely and it'll pull its legs and it'll roll off. And you think, I didn't even like go near, and I've interrupted this whole kind of like scene. So you're engaging with the environment carefully. Learning to focus by rocking backwards and forwards, I think, is like really important, because you obviously can't use autofocus. And then you can kind of like, I know a lot of the photographs I've been showing you are pretty much like on the citizen science kind of natural history side, but obviously you can play and get like really creative with the macro stuff as well. So I just kind of like really, there is no perfect lens, there's no perfect setup, there's no perfect lighting, and what works for me is not going to work for somebody else. I just really encourage people just to play. It doesn't have to be perfect. And what's so amazing for me about this whole genre is that just being outside and being in nature and being with the insects, it's almost like that's okay. Like if I carry my camera outside and I didn't take one shot, it's fine. I had a fantastic outing. So that really is kind of like my parting kind of wish for people. And I just would like to leave people with this. And I'll read it. So my wish is that through this presentation and other exposure to insect macro photography and these creatures, is that just as these creatures that are as tiny as a pinhead each have a unique purpose and a vital role to play in the web of life, so too are we, unique and beautiful and intricate and vital. And so too do we have a unique purpose and role to play. For are we not the microcosm within the macrocosm that is our planet Earth? So I'd like to just leave that with you.
Fantastic.
And then to say, life on Earth is precious, and it certainly deserves a closer look. So if people have got questions, I know we haven't had left much place for
that's
questions.
fine. That's fine. Don't worry about that. Just if you just unshare your desktop, and then we can bring you up.
Okay, sure. So just to say, that's my Instagram and my email address. And I'm looking at doing considering doing workshops in terms of macros. So we'll see where that goes.
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that
okay, so where do
so I think it might just be at the bottom there, or I think I can unshare you from here. Oh, it's the technical thing. Stop participant sharing. There we go. All right. Perfect.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you very much. That was fantastic.
Pleasure.
Lots of comments over here. I definitely think that there's a market for workshops. Maybe in the comments now, while we're busy chatting, if people can just say if they would want to do a
great
workshop in this arena. It's just guys, if you keen, put it in the comments. Yes, please, etc. Desiré is going to on the social media and those sorts of things, she'll put links, etc. But I would actually love to join you on one of your macro workshops, lying in the grass, some sort of milk Tupperware thing going over the top with the flash shining through it. It sounds like MacGyver stuff, which is great.
Fantastic. Yeah.
There was a question here. Let me just go and have a look and see, relating to, and again, it's down to the settings. And from what I can assume it is, Tony wanted to know what is the speed light set at? So I suppose power-wise, what would you be using? Would it be full power, or especially if you're at F8, F10, somewhere there?
Yeah. So you don't want to push up the flash to that power for two reasons. One is you don't want the harsh light, but also you need the recycle time. So, the creature's moving quite quickly. You need to be able to get through a few shots. So generally you start at 1/8 power, then going down to 1/4.
Yeah.
And the thing is also, when you look for a flash, is to look for that recycling time. You want something that's going to recycle quite quickly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I suppose my initial thinking, and I clearly didn't think about it, when I'm using a flash, it's normally something that's a couple of meters away from me and I'm bouncing it off a wall or a ceiling. If it's this far away, full power on the EF600, that's going to just
imagine
it's going to melt it.
No detail.
Well, no insect. It's just going to melt it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So, but as with everything, once you've done it once or twice, you'll be able to see. But Tony, if you want to start off at a quarter, and work yourself up from there.
Yeah. And obviously, it depends on the diffusing material you're using as well. Some will let more light through. Some,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If it's some tracing paper versus a thicker Tupperware type plastic, that will obviously make a difference as well.
Definitely. Yeah.
Anton says Des visits me twice a year or so. We'll do a session. There we go. Anton's just up the road from me, so we'll definitely do it. Hey, you know what we should do? I've got an idea. Let's organize a workshop for you.
Okay. Outing as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we'll do it in Anton's garden because it's massive and it's rough and rugged and whatever. Okay. So next time you come up here, we'll organize you a workshop. We'll get some people along and they'll pay you because you're awesome and all of that kind of stuff. So there we go. That's the first workshop. I don't know when it'll be. Once lockdown is ended, we'll set it up. No, that's perfect. I love it. I love it. Cool. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. What are the questions? Just beautiful work. Thank you. Very interesting presentation. It's the work is amazing. I think that hold on. Maybe I should rephrase that, which you might prefer this answer. The bugs are beautiful. They are amazing. Your camera skills are great. Just kidding. But at the end of the day,
what camera do you use? Yeah.
Exactly. What settings?
Yeah.
What you've done is just brought to life and given these things characters, and you can almost like the I don't know what that was with the red and yellow shield on its back.
Spider.
The
Yeah.
kite spider. There we go. It's somehow it's given them this just a character and personality, and I think it's amazing. I really, really do. It's I know how to do that with portraits, etc. But
Yeah.
I just find that these insects and arachnids have got such personality now that I've seen them on your images, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that.
Good, pleasure. No, thank you for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, goeie genade, gogas. Another comment there.
Gogas. Gogas.
There we go.
I love visually what it just looks so nice.
Yeah, absolutely. See, now we can sort you out with a logo and all right. Before we've add a whole lot more into that, thank you very much. It was very cool.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate your time and your energy. If you'd like to, you can go and answer some of the questions that people have posted and take it from there. And then as soon as you've got your other workshops, not the one that we're organizing, as soon as you've got your other workshops, make sure that you let us know and we'll pass them on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.